Welcome back to High Class Gear. Get yourself ready for another great video. You won't find anyone with more realistic and intriguing stories from the big 80s and the weird 90s than this channel. If you came here looking for something strange, creepy, car chases, police fights, stupid mistakes that came back to get me, or even for a little bit of knowledge, you've definitely come to the right place. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you stay up to date with all the great content coming your way. The following story takes place in the year 1987. I was trying to go to sleep tonight, but the sound of helicopters and police sirens was hard to ignore. Both my parents worked 2 jobs. My mother had just got home from the second one while my father had just left for his second. My older sister had finished her final review for her next set of finals in her new career in working with the dead. She had always been obsessed with the study of the dead, and being a mortician seemed to be an exciting life choice for her. My elder brother was following my uncle in becoming a mechanic. I was 13 years old and I was unsure about my career choice as of yet. I had options but didn't know which one I would really go for. My elder brother knocked on my bedroom door to tell me he was headed out to help my uncle with an engine overhaul and to get more work experience. I didn't bother turning around to face the door and bid him farewell, but instead, I acknowledged his greeting with a muffled reply. The house then grew quiet with just the stirrings of my mother getting ready for bed and my sister walking back and forth from the kitchen to her bedroom. My younger sister was already asleep in her room just down the hall. Besides the stirrings in the next room and the hallway, all was quiet in the house. I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my life and couldn't make up my mind. It was hard to stay positive with some of the things that had been going on recently. 2 of my friends had lost their lives to violence perpetrated upon them by skinheads, and still another had an attack of epilepsy, and no one helped him. He died there, slowly choking on his swollen tongue. Other friends were dying in gang violence or being killed by the police. One even died when the police charged into the wrong house and mistook his TV remote for a weapon and executed him. They filled him with enough lead to make him a number 2 pencil. What was the point of doing all this work in school and talking about the future if there wasn't one to look forward to? This was the question I kept asking in my mind. But eventually the sirens and helicopters outside seemed to fade from my senses and my eyes felt heavy. When I woke up next, it was to the sound of helicopter blades beating outside, not far above my house. It sounded like it was going to land on the roof. I heard raised voices, then screaming and banging. It was my mother. My eyes snapped open, and I went to move, and felt a pain in my neck, and saw a bright light above me and directly in front of me. "Don't move!" all of the officers shouted, while I could hear loud stomping through the house. The room was in complete darkness, and the only light source was from the massive flashlights on the guns of the officers, or the one flashlight that was moving while an officer was speaking. "Do you own a Raiders jacket? Do you own an LA Kings hat?" the officer kept repeating, as if he was trying to hypnotize me with the questions. My face was buried in my pillow because another officer had a flashlight on a rifle, and the barrel of it was buried at the base of my neck. I couldn't even talk, let alone answer. From what little I could see from the glare of the flashlights, they were all wearing body armor, helmets that made them look like Darth Vader, and they were all armed. "Forget it. Just go in the closet. The doors won't open." "Break the doors!" the officer with the flashlight barked, and 2 officers broke the wooden doors to my closet. They rummaged through the clothes I had carefully ironed and hung up the day before. They pulled each one off the hanger, ripping some of them, but there was no sign of a Raiders jacket or LA Kings hat. "Are you in a gang? Are you in a gang? Are you a Crip? Are you a Hoover Crip?" he kept shouting. I went to roll over and see if my mother and sisters were okay, and I was thrown to the floor and had 2 guns trained on me, one jammed at the base of my skull and another shoved in the small of my back. "Don't move! Stay down, gangster!" I felt feet pressing down on my arms and legs. I could hear the women of the house screaming, and I was utterly powerless to do anything. My father and brother were both gone, and in their absence, I couldn't protect the house, and I was in charge. They subjected the house to a huge search, upturning furniture, breaking kitchen cabinets, busting closet doors, and opening and slamming bedroom doors. They even kicked the speakers on my stereo set. The only thing I could make out was the terror-inducing sound of the beating of the helicopter blades, the squelching of the voices on the police radios, the screaming of my womenfolk, and the back-and-forth conversations of the officers rampaging through the house. I continued to move under their grasp and had no way to escape or speak other than a few grunts I could push from my throat. I need to get up, I thought to myself with urgency. After what seemed like hours, they finally took their boots and weapons off, grabbed me by my arms and jerked me from the lying position to where I was standing against the wall. Now I could look in the face of my captors, the people who invaded my house. I could make them out more clearly, through the flashlight beams bouncing off the room and illuminating their twisted, ghoulish faces. Most were clean-shaven with the exception of one or two that had the Hulk Hogan mustache. I hated them all. I looked at my mother and sisters against the wall being shouted at and ran to help them but was slammed to the ground again, picked back up and slammed against the wall. My head bounced on the wall, my vision went blurry, and my hearing was impacted for a few seconds. When my head cleared, the officer was standing over me looking down in disdain while clutching his weapon amid the flashlights and orders being barked by the other officers. "You want to say something, son? Is that it? I'll kill you right here just like the rest of you little bastards outside," he said while gesturing outside. I felt cold, angry, violated, and most of all confused about what was going on. The sleep that I was in had finally worn off, and in the darkness of this night, I stood looking at him saying nothing. They eventually resolved that nothing was to be found and left as quickly as they came. Soon the door slammed shut, the helicopter blades faded away and the police sirens were no more. They were on to the next house next door, then the one after that. I didn't speak to anyone the rest of the night, not even in the morning. I picked at my breakfast cereal and barely drank the milk. I offered pat and simple responses to my father and brother when they returned. I think I was in shock. They attempted to comfort me and told me I'd done nothing wrong, but something had changed within me. I was in a haze of rage and anger. I went to school and after a small fight crossed out of the school and onto the street. I didn't know what a Crip or a Hoover was, but I made a resolution from that night. I was going to join it. I was going to be one, and I was going to be the baddest Hoover the world had ever seen. I joined that day, and in my rage and anger, let loose on the streets. I allowed the anger, rage, and powerlessness I felt on that night consume me. So, when I joined the Hoovers, I went after the world. Skinheads, police, the rivals to the Hoovers. Any and everything was now on my list of destruction. I was part of a group of foot soldiers that took this Hoover Crip identity and spread it as far and wide in California. Then we took it on the road. Hoovers cropped up in Portland, Oregon. Then it hit Seattle, Washington. Next came Tacoma, Washington, then Denver, Colorado, then Wyoming and Montana. Anywhere near California or around the West Coast, I spread this culture of violence, gangs, rage, and misplaced anger. When I was grabbed in 1984 and detained and asked if I was a Hoover, I couldn't answer the question. Well, 3 years later, I was on the Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums or Crash computer list. I now had photos in post offices listing me as wanted. I was extradited from 2 states. After these 3 years and the gang wars I've joined, when you ask me, are you a Hoover? My answer is yes, I am a Hoover, a 7-4 Hoover, and the whole world was now going to know about the Hoovers. If you enjoy these videos and what we do here, subscribe to the High Class Gear channel, give us a like, and hit the notification bell so you always get updates on new content every week. Stay safe out there.